I got to see that balance between, I know what hands-on is, I know technically how networking should work and how routing should work, things like that. But I also knew how to talk to executive level, C-suite, executive and elected level folks as well, and be able to frame the conversation correctly for that. That's how I think I was able to stay in this for quite a long time and still enjoy the ability to do that.
So do you think that those softer skills, communication, budgeting, the ability to see strategy instead of just seeing the blinking lights, is that the difference between an IT practitioner and an IT leader?
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny when you were talking about the CIO title, that's been problematic in local government. Yeah, C-suite level concept, and especially the CIO, that came from the private sector. And 20 years ago, most local government organizations did not have a CIO. They had an IT manager, an IT director. And the reason why I find that very interesting is later on, organizations decided, well, I really need to have a chief technology officer. I need to have a chief innovation officer. And what they would naturally do is go, well, the IT manager seems like the logical person for that, so let me give them that title. The problem is the original titles that person had probably were correct, and they were serving that person correctly. They could just be a senior IT analyst that just happened to be running a small shop. It could be an IT manager. It could even be a director. But you're exactly right. The leadership aspect was either not encouraged, not recognized, or in a lot of ways was just simply ignored. This person came up through network technology, or they came up through the organization. Of course, they should run the IT shop. And what a lot of organizations fail to see is that C-suite level position. If you're going to give someone the CIO title, they have to have a strong degree of leadership. And that's what a lot of regular IT progression paths do not really acknowledge or even require. But it is so critical at the C-suite level. Someone has to be able to speak the language of enterprise level risk management, as well as being able to understand visionary leadership versus task level leadership. And I think that's been the biggest failing. A lot of CIOs either haven't been encouraged to look at that, or they have no interest or motivation whatsoever to do that as well. And organizations typically will hire someone that they think is more technical than leadership because of the fear of the unknown. And I think that's been the biggest problem. We've seen it play out consistently in the past 20 years. People were put in those positions who were not ready to do that. And now they got to catch up. You either got to figure this out, or the organization at some point, especially when they get new leadership in, is going to go, you know, they're nowhere near as good as the CIO at the place I was at before. I think we have a leadership problem here.
So have you seen good transitions? I mean, yours is somewhat non-traditional. You were never a true practitioner of a specific skill set within IT. But you and I both know brilliant network architects, brilliant software people that have been elevated to CIO for several reasons, good and bad. And they struggle with these aspects of the CIO job, the chief job, which is mostly leadership. It's 80% leadership, if not more. Have you seen examples of people making that transition from traditional practitioners that are deep in a specific skill set that then become great CIOs?
I've seen some. And the interesting thing is a lot of times these were folks that either didn't initially start out in IT, or they just happen to have already had good leadership. And when I say good leadership, I always caveat it with this, because I've consistently seen this. Just because you're not a good leader doesn't mean that you can't be a good leader. What usually happens is you never saw an example of good leadership, or you were under a good mentor. Because people who tend to have very poor leadership skills, a lot of times just because they were never exposed to a good leader. They've had poor leaders or somewhat ineffective leaders. So I think a lot of those people that were successful, and it really was only a handful of people, came from a background where they saw good leadership. They got good guidance from someone. And so that part of them was able to develop naturally through the example setting that the person above them did. A lot of other places, they haven't known any better. So they did what they knew how to do, which was control the IT space that I have, do a little bit of empire building, honestly. as well as play a little bit to the perception of people are scared of what they don't know. So they assume, I don't want to rock the boat with IT. My computer is going to stop working. And there's a culture in IT for a long time of play to that a little bit. Use that as your leveraging to be able to get something done rather than doing the way you need to do, which is let's tie this to something. And what are we looking to do? Then I can tell you how to do that. I think the key thing is a lot of CIOs don't know because they haven't been exposed to it. You get results by aligning resources. That's what a good leader does. You don't just go out and buy more resources. You don't hire a bunch of new people and then throw that at the problem. It doesn't do any good. Good leadership and results come from alignment of resources. And I think a lot of CIOs who are pretty good at the technology side of it and are pretty good at the visioning side of it, I think that's where they fall short. They assume they need to go very task level deep to solve something, but they're also not looking at what's going on over here that actually is shaping the reason why we're doing this. Because everything's competing resources, right? Especially in nonprofits, local gov, transit authorities, all the clients that we work with. There's a real competition for resources. So you have to be efficient with it. And you have to really dial in as to what can we do and what can we not do, rather than just saying, yeah, let's do it all. Let me hire 5 new people. Boom, you have a solution. And most of the times you don't. You have something that's misguided, it's put in place, and it's not sustainable.
So for people watching this that want to become CIOs, because it's a cool job, right? Especially now, you get to control a lot of the fate of the organization. Everyone wants AI. Everyone wants the newest ERP system, cloud this, SaaS that. What should somebody that, let's say, is a practitioner, because, as things move to the cloud, as things become more homogenous in terms of software technologies, standing out in that field of great engineers, showing those abilities that you mentioned to get to that top level job, how can somebody that's, let's say, a network director or some sort of a leadership level that they're responsible for a tech stack, they're responsible for making sure you're not attacked in the cyberspace, that your backups are done, all of these things they're doing with people under them. But to your point, it's very tactical. They know the checklist, they know what to look for. How does someone in that position show enough leadership or promise that the city manager or the county mayor or the CEO of some organization says, here's a promising individual that could become, obviously the leadership needs to understand what a CIO's job is. It's not putting out fires, it is being strategic. But again, to our audience that's watching this today that is interested in becoming CIOs, or how do you show that promise?
Challenge yourself to be able to explain things without using technical jargon, without having to use abbreviations, without having to refer to a set of specifications or a chart. Because the key difference is in your ability to see how this makes an impact, both to the organization as well as what does this mean for the end user. Because I don't see that on a regular basis. People will talk about their domain within the IT department as to what they focus on and what they do. And they can speak very well to that. And a lot of times these are folks that do have a lot of training. They're very skilled at what they do. But you try and step outside of that a little bit and go, so this project you're working on, this database conversion that you're doing, what is the actual impact? If I'm talking to a citizen, or I'm talking to a mayor or city council or city manager, or the person over in planning who's in charge of this workflow that the work you're doing affects, how do I explain that? And does that person actually understand what I'm looking to do? Because if you default to technical jargon, you're going to lose your audience. If you can very simply show this is going to have an impact here, it's going to allow you to do this. This means the citizens are going to be able to transact business with the city a lot easier than they could a year before. And you're tying it into a vision. And even just something that simple, you will stand out like you wouldn't believe compared to a lot of other people. And I think that's natural. We all get into our own little silos if we don't challenge ourselves. So really challenge yourself to be able to explain things like that and be able to imagine I'm in the room with the city leadership and I have to explain the reason why we're doing that project. And grab someone who's not in IT and say, hey, can I practice this with you? And does this actually make sense? I think that's where my success was. I just
Mm.
knew how to explain stuff without having to go to technical jargon. And that's what allowed me to get the support that I needed to do. So focusing in on that, challenge yourself to be able to dial into being able to explain things like that. Because at the end of the day, it's what matters, right? I mean, visions are actually simple. And what you're looking to do as a city council is actually rather simple. The details may be numerous and there might be problems. But my goodness, it does have to tie into an actual result that the organization is looking for. It's going to impact the organization. It can't just be something that's for IT's own sake.